Hello. Good evening. Kalispera. Yasas. Hello. Good evening. That was an attempt at a bilingual palindrome. Does anybody know what a palindrome is?
It's a Greek word.
What does it mean?
I cannot tell you, it's a secret.
No looking on your phone. A palindrome is a word that is spelled the same way forwards as it is backwards, or spelled the same way backwards as it is forwards, or an entire expression spelled the same forwards and backwards. The name Hannah in English, for example, H-A-N-N-A-H, is a palindrome. So is Anna in its various permutations, in Greek, in Spanish, in English, A-N-A, A-N-N-A. How do you spell Anna in Greek? Is it 2 times? Alpha, Ni, Alpha. It's a palindrome. So, once again, Kalispera, Yasas, hello, good evening. It's sort of a palindrome. You get it, whatever, fine. I'm a little nervous. I don't usually do pre-show presentations. If you've been here before, you know that this space is marked and cursed by the post-show presentations that I have given. This is the first time that I'm giving a pre-show talk at the behest of the artist. So far, it's in English. Να μιλήσω ιταλικά, θα προσπαθήσω. Το καλή τέχνη θέλει. I gotta do English. The artist has requested that none of us engage with this performance via our telephones. I'm going to lead the charge right now and show you how this is done. You activate your telephone as to turn it off. If, for example, you have a passcode, enter your passcode. I'm using an iPhone 5 model. I don't know what other models exist. Those who would like to do this in real time with me are most encouraged, in the interest of saving time. You're going to turn off your phone. In the case of my telephone, that means pressing this button right here, and then sliding this that way. The phone is off. The performance will not begin until everyone's phone is off. I will easily subject you to my circular ambulatory walking and talking. Are we all in compliance with the rules of the evening? Phones are turned off. You are most cordially thanked for your compliance with the rules of the evening. Conveniently and coincidentally enough, you are all seated in the places where you should be seated. I was just about to say, I'm going to encourage no smoking during this performance. We do have a balcony from which you may view the performance. There are people doing that already, where you are most cordially invited to smoke, should that be your desire and your need. Is there anything else anybody would like to know before this performance begins? I cannot guarantee that I'll provide the information. Μήπως κάποιος θέλει να ξέρει κάτι πριν από το performance? No? What's the question?
About camera photography from a camera.
This is a very interesting moment that has necessitated a disruption in the circular walk.
You are a fine bro.
Thank you. So now let's deconstruct very quickly this moment. You're asking me something I didn't anticipate, and I don't want to bother the artist being like, oh my God, what about cameras? So I'm going to exercise executive power here, observing meanwhile how deeply violent that can actually be, and hope that whatever I decide is not that cruel.
Can I ask something else?
No, not yet. The use of professional photography, the use of a camera, is strictly limited to Alexandra Masmanidi, who is in the corner over here. Everybody, this is Alexandra Masmanidi, very, very gifted and talented photographer, very gifted and talented artist. We had an exhibition of Alexandra's work here in January, and we were saying earlier this evening, we cannot believe that it was even within this calendar year. It feels like it was so long ago. Thanks also to Dimitra, our resident videographer, who is standing behind her video camera. Another talented and skilled professional with the express permission to capture this evening as she will. There was another question. Is it very short? No, but you're gonna ask it?
Did you ask that or not?
I'm not gonna answer that.
Okay.
Use of cameras is limited to Alexandra and Dimitra. No use of cell phones. Enjoy.
I'm dancing on graves. I'm dancing on graves. I'm dancing on graves. I'm exhuming. I'm digging up. Dancing. Been thinking, through this dancing. Been thinking about resistance. Maybe it's a word you heard in an art space recently. I've been thinking about solidarity. Maybe it's a word you heard in an art space recently. It's very popular words these days. I've been thinking about the different risks associated with different kinds of resistance. The risks associated with different kinds of positions. The positionality of risk, the way in which risk is figured by one's positionality. I've been thinking about Sadar Kholayari, the Iranian woman who found out after she dressed up as a man to try to get past the gate and see her favorite soccer team play in Tehran, that she would be imprisoned. And rather than allowing her body to experience what she knew she would experience in prison there, self-immolated outside the gate. I've been thinking about Murat Bekta, the young Turkish boy who was killed by a right-wing extremist in Berlin and whose case was never investigated, speaking of which, do I even have to say his name? Zaki was brave enough to be public about being abject, to be public about being HIV positive. I think about that risk. I think about the difference between that risk and the risk of Corinne Gaines, who, because of her parking tickets, ended up in a standoff with the police in her house where her child watched her brutally murdered. And I think about how many trans women have been murdered just in the US alone this year. And why we won't even hear that their cases won't be investigated. Because we already know. I think about Fred Hampton, the Black Panther who was murdered in his bed by the police. And then I am here. and we are here. And their names can become hashtags, and their names can become calls to action, or can they? I'm wondering about what's possible for me here today. I recognize that I have the body of acceptability. I have a passport that can take me anywhere I want in the world, potentially with the exception of Bhutan and with Israel. I have a body that I can identify as genderqueer, but passes in every situation it needs to. And what does it mean for me to say these names even in front of you right now? What does it mean? What does it do? Is it possible to recognize the multiplicity of these lives and so many others while recognizing what they can teach us, what we must take forward from them? Is that kind of solidarity possible? I think about resistance. I think about the risk of resistance. I think about the risk that my family went through in escaping the Armenian Genocide. I think about the risk they faced as vigilante fighters in solidarity with others during the Lebanese Civil War. And I think about how easy it could be for me to fight for nothing. And how deeply I wish I could fight for everything. Each of us has resistance in our lineages. Many of us here are faced with threats of violence simply for existing in the wrong context. The strength in this room is much more than we're willing to admit. And when I say lineage, I don't just mean blood lineage. I mean the way in which many of you here were closer to and shared more with Zaki than anyone blood related to him. I'm digging up graves. Digging up graves. I ask you to water the flowers on these graves with me, and in so doing, honor the resistances in your lineage. And pour the water into your hands. Lineages of resistance. So what does that mean? Well, I certainly have my own, and I have my own issues with it, a lot of problems. One could say, perhaps this work is trying to make those problems in a way that isn't just about me, but might be about you and your problems too. Isn't that what good art is supposed to do? It's supposed to be about me and my problems, you and your problems, and me and your problems, and you and my problems. So, problems. Speaking of problems, well, lineage, problems, resistance. Okay, so, on one side of my family, as I mentioned, refugees from the Armenian Genocide. After the genocide, which really took place over several years in the form of small massacres against Assyrians, Armenians, maybe some Kurds, some other sundry, Caucasus people, Armenia was left with about a quarter of their original amount of land, a down language, a fading culture, and a really shitty birthright program. Now, those are the Armenians who immigrated to Lebanon and ended up embroiled in the civil war I mentioned, which raged for 25 years and ended not with any kind of peace, but with just kind of, let's move on with it and not talk to each other anymore. I was there during the 25th anniversary year of the end of the war, and people were tearing down the memorials. And Lebanon is constantly reluctant to identify its Arabness, its Muslimness, and seeks to engage in a mythology around being Phoenician, which I'm sure is offensive to some people in here. Now, on my other side, it's not so clear. My mother was adopted in the US and never wanted to look up her actual lineage. I don't really believe her. She didn't, and what I'm left with is a book that someone gave her at a funeral, which is a very rose-colored mythologizing of the Palatine Germans. The Palatine Germans came from the Rhine Valley during the 9 Years' War because the French repeatedly massacred them due to their Protestant beliefs and often just because they felt like it. They were expatriated to Britain. The Tories were kind of like the alt-right wing of today, didn't like them so much, and the Whigs weren't really able to use them for their pro-immigrant sob story. So eventually, they were expatriated again to the United States. And that is my kinship lineage. In truth, like most people who identify as white in the US, I'm a mutt, I'm Scottish, I'm Irish, I'm English, God fucking knows, maybe I'm Swedish. The Germans started amicable relations with the Mohawk indigenous people and then eventually betrayed them. Using their own self-pity as a form of self-righteousness to take what they were not given. I sit. I sit. I sit in between these histories. And I wonder how it is possible to heal. I cannot disavow my shame. I refuse to split this history into good and bad. Into those terrible white people and those not so terrible beige people. And in truth, who among us does not contain complexities? And can we grapple with them such that we keep what needs keeping? And acknowledge what we might like to grow past? Who among us does not have both corruption, greed, violence, as well as acts of political resistance and survival in our lineages? Is there a way to position ourselves honestly Like I said, this piece isn't just about my problems. If you're willing to allow it to be, it's also about yours. And so, I'm going to ask you to move through it with me. I'm going to ask you the same questions I had asked myself in precisely the manner in which I have asked them. And perhaps in that way, we can clear out internal cobwebs together. It will require your participation, which is good because otherwise this could get really boring. But it will be gentle. If you would, close your eyes. I'm going to be like this for a while, so get comfortable. Place your hands on your belly or your heart, an energetic center that grounds you of your own choosing. And once you've found a way that you can sit comfortably, just breathe. And notice what it feels like to actually pay attention to your breath. As you're breathing, imagine the skin around your eyelids relaxing. Unclench your jaw. And maybe for the first time today, simply attend to yourself. And as you breathe, ask yourself these questions, and rather than answering them with words, answer them with the feelings they elicit. What in my lineage do I want to heal and move past? What in my lineage would I like to remember and reinvigorate? How do I resist the structures at hand that seek to crush our humanity? Imagine at the back of your throat a beautiful, flowering, open meadow at the base of a mountain. And breathe into that image. In a few moments, you all will be singing or humming into that image as a way of continuing to meditate on these questions. With your voices, collectively, you will create a drone. You can take breaths, take breaks, change what you're doing with your voice as often as you'd like. You'll know when to finish when you hear my voice on the microphone. Singing into these questions. Take a nice deep breath in and sing out. I have words. Too many words. I have words. Too many words. As I mentioned earlier, I have a book. I have a book that my mother got from some funeral of like God knows who, some relative she probably barely even knew, a funeral she was required to go to, that mythologizes her pseudo-German heritage by adoption. And then, I have my grandfather's memoirs. He published them because he wasn't getting paid enough as a teacher, and he wanted everyone to know it. But he started from his childhood, when his younger sister died of illnesses probably brought on by malnutrition. His father had been killed in a way that he only got word of it and then never saw him again. And he and his mother and his brother escaped to Lebanon, where my father was born. He is the prodigal son returning with Converse shoes and Levi's jeans to a country that cannot even get Amazon orders. And so that's what that book is about. Two very different texts, but they're what I have. They're what I have in terms of situating myself and thinking about the means of survival, these very two different sides of my lineage engaged in, and what brings me shame, and what brings me great sorrow, and what brings me pride. I would like to share these with you. I would like you to read them to me.
The Palatine Germans were an industrious, God-fearing people of peasant stock. They depended more upon themselves than upon others. They wielded the mattock, the axe, and the maul. By the power of their brawny arms, they felled the majestic oaks and laid low the towering hickory. They prostrated the walnut, poplar, and chestnut, and cleaved them into rails for fences. They persevered untiringly until the forest was changed into arable field.
Our Germans, as we know, industrious as fuck. What were they to do? Where were they to go? They could simply only become products of their environment. They could only engage in the reality which they were given, am I right? Did they ask anyone before they cut down those trees? When I performed this piece in Germany, I was told that Germans disavowed anyone who left Germany as part of the imperialist colonization project. Isn't that nice? I mean, as for those who came to America, what better reason to exile someone when you have been exiled yourself?
My brother and I would raid the gardens belonging to the Kurds and hunt their chickens with our slideshows. We would pluck the feathers of the chickens, make a fire, and cook them on the spot. We would always carry matches for fire and salt for the poultry or meat. The Turkish soldiers would transport ammunition from the train station to the garrison. We kids would follow their bicycles. Along the way, we would steal their bullets and great grenades and bring them home. In our home alone, we had 2 truck loads of generates. One day, my mother accidentally fired a pistol. Fortunately, the bullet didn't hit the grenades. My mother and our house were spared.
When I was a child, my father would set up 100 black hat fireworks, set them off on the fence and laugh and laugh and laugh. When I was a child, my father would watch the beginnings of the Iraq War on the news and laugh and laugh and laugh. He had seen it all before. He told me that my country gave them the weapons, and I knew it to be true. But oh, we weren't laughing when in 2006 the IDF encircled Beirut. My aunt and my cousins had to escape. It was my uncle's first time in America, and the only way he could get back into his own country was through Syria, a safer place at the time. I was at a dance festival. When I asked my cousin what she took with her when they escaped, she said, just the cat.
The Germans did not come to America for worldly gain, but for a home, where they could duel under their own vine and fig tree, with none to molest or make them afraid. Probably no nationality gets as much comfort out of the home as the Germans do. To them, the home was the nucleus around which grew the state that later developed and broadened into the nation. Hence, the Germans were nation builders as well.
Doesn't that read nicely? Where were they to go? What were they to do? My forebears. And now, so many of the artists in their lineage moved to the cities thinking
can't live in these small towns. I belong in New York, where I might raise the rent for all of the people of color around me.
I foolishly climbed out of the ditch. I was wearing a white gown made out of thick tent fabric sewn for me by my mother. The Turks, who were situated on top of the hill, saw me and began to fire at me. I immediately jumped back into the ditch and saved myself. I walked through the barracks and headed behind the bushes alongside the road. The Turks spotted me again and fired at me, but missed.
Little did my father know, when he was my grandfather's age, that he might be a vigilante fighter too. I can show you the photo of him holding the Uzi. Take this, you little bitch. It'll be over soon. Stop shaking. 5 minutes. 25 years. Who gives a shit? Meanwhile, every time a police officer sees me, I'm practically offered a lollipop. Having in common? What might it even mean to have something in common with this? What might it even mean to claim this history? What is it even? In this life, when I was in Berlin, I saw a Kurdish artist who performed a piece at one of the largest museums there in solidarity with Barak Bekta, the young Turkish boy who was killed. And so, let me be clear. This is not about the Armenians, it's not about the Turks. It's about wondering what's possible when all the freedoms that my father and grandfather fought for are something I get to have without even trying. I live in a nation that prides itself on freedom, yet where a visit to the emergency room costs $1,000. I live in a nation where protests are met with complaints of not being able to get to work on time because you are what your job is. I live in a nation that had some of the most powerful Black solidarity movements and economies in the world. I live in a nation that thinks it is not racist.
So what do I take with me? What do you take with you? What do we take with us? What is solid? What is heat? What could burn this motherfucker down? Start again. Who's right? Who's wrong? And why? And now for the seance. I want to first say that I recognize on sort of the double-edged sword of this performance being in English. Because it means that those who are not Greek speakers can maybe understand it if they understand English. But it also presupposes English as a central hegemonic force that everyone is also expected to understand. And there's not much I can do about that. Not now, at least. As impossible as it is, which is sort of the point of the whole thing, I wonder how we might translate some of these things into words. I wonder if that's possible here in this space tonight. And I wonder if we can operate
with a combination of accountability and gentleness. We are living in a raw, nasty time. We are living in a time of great pain for many people. We are living in a time where if you have a child now, by the time they are 30, they may no longer be able to breathe the air around us. And so, accountability and gentleness at the same time. I wonder what people want to heal. I wonder what in your histories gives you the occasion, the desire to rethink, to move beyond. And I also wonder what you do want to take with you. What ways of being, what kinds of choices and actions in your lineage feel pertinent to this world that we're living in and the way you're choosing to live in it. What to keep and what to move beyond. I open these questions to you. I feel in this space that there's a lot of potential for us to be able to connect through these questions. But I also will not force anyone to speak. We can hold the silence as long as we need to until something emerges. What do you want to keep and what do you want to throw away?
I want to keep my freedom, spirit, and the enthusiasm about life, and I want to throw away my jealousy and the boringness, I say that. But this is about myself, I don't really...
Still matters, I think.
Yes, I also think. And you?
I've been talking the whole time. But thanks.
I also want to give away jealousy, past jealousy, particularly because I think as a feeling, it can operate very viciously as a symptom of a deeper and very violent system of division, where we assess ourselves and each other based on what we think we have or do not have, what others have and do not have, and how our positions and their positions fill up against each other. This is really divisive. This is really violent. And in that way, me too. I want to move past jealousy as a way towards moving towards something other than division.
I want to lose the bitterness from my mother's side of the family, but I want to keep the strength of the anger.
I want to throw away the image of greed and recapture creativity and innovation of my ancestry.
I'd like to thank you for your questions, because they open questions on how to do that. So, regarding my lineage is a tragic story. So I'd like to get rid of all the wrong isms that were contained within this lineage. Because there is like fascism and warmongering and nationalism, patriarchy, like the wrongest things ever, they're all contained in my lineage. And I'd like to keep the elegance that I was taught somehow. And it's very pretty. The question though that arises that I find very interesting is how can I do it as an individual? So thank you.
Have the same questions.
I want to keep hope and lose the sorrow.
I would like us to throw away names as a symbol of individuality, in the sense to focus more on the group and the community and the society.
I'm from Poland, from rather conservative family. Like my family model from the side of my father is rather conservative. And I want to throw away the feeling of maybe guilty that I won't fit in that model.
like to keep hope as well, because it keeps us going on. And I would like to get rid of conflict, whether it's inner or with others, because it feels like it stops us from moving on.
I also want to maintain hope because I don't think it visualizes an object. I think it's more about an openness and an enthusiasm that goes against the grain of cynicism and pessimism.
I want to keep my humanity and my country to keep my humanity and the kindness and the effortless kindness that we have in our country. And I want my country to be free of xenophobia and the fear of the different and the hate that others must come together and just remember I met.
I would like to get rid of the stereotypes that are written on my body of how I should or I should not behave.
It's time to go to church. Thank you all for sharing. If anyone had anything else they wanted to throw into the communal pot, feel free to speak now or later. Thank you all so much for being here. I think it's really powerful to speak the words. That the act of these utterances is important, and that for us to live in these complexities together is also important. And I think it is the way that we can move toward real solidarities that are also accountable. Very grateful that you all were willing to hold this space together. I'm going to take a little pressure off Macklin now and announce also that I'll be teaching a workshop here on Saturday from 12 to 3 if you would like to come. It is going to be really accessible and gentle, and also involving the voice and the body and a bit of writing. So I'd love to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.